Well, hello and welcome back. We're going to conclude Ecclesiastes chapter 11 this week. And the theme of this chapter is a little different than chapter 10. Chapter 10 had to deal with Proverbs, and here we're dealing, the way I've categorized it, the way I'm viewing it, or the way I'm telling the story of Ecclesiastes 11 is related to the idea of predicting the future. Now, we started this last week. We're going to quickly review it, and we're going to build upon it. But I want you to think about predictions. I think this week has been a very timely week. I would not say it's been a particularly great week in many ways. We'll talk about that. I hope it was for you. For many in our country, there's been a lot of difficulties this week. So regardless, I want to ask you some questions here at the beginning. What can we collectively predict? What can we know, and what can we do? For now, I'm just going to introduce those questions. We'll come back to them as we go through it. Now, indulge me for just a minute. I think it's important that I build upon last week. We're going to conclude this chapter, but let me take maybe 2 minutes to do a quick review. So we're talking here about the idea of predictions. And many times in life, we do predict things, or we attempt to predict things. We rely upon the predictions of others. So a prediction is an event or action that we think will happen. We're saying maybe it's a probability, or maybe we're saying it, with almost certainty, or maybe we're not saying it much at all, but we're saying, what are the odds? What is the likelihood of this event or action? We may use a model. We may use our knowledge and experience. But we try to do this. Okay? So if we think about it, we have going on now, it's getting near the conclusion of March Madness. Baseball season started. There's a lot of areas of sports where people predict. And if we think about increasingly the gambling market, people like to put their money out there. They think it's exciting to predict things, though sadly most lose money, probably billions of dollars. The weather. That's something I can relate to this last week, as can tens of millions or more Americans have had to deal with the weather this week. What a week for the stock market. We'll talk more about that. And of course, business, they're trying to predict things. Right now, people are trying to predict about tariffs, but fill in the blank. It could be other things. Now, my goal is not to get into the specifics of these, but we're making predictions. We're trying to make predictions, and then we're assessing the results of those predictions. And these are just some very small, well, these aren't so small, but these are just some, not all, of the ways we might go through this. So we started to, and again, I will refer you to last week's message because I'm going to go through this fast. It's some difficult sayings here. But cast your bread upon the waters. You will find it after many days. Give it a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen. Now, I'm going to give you the short version. It's about partly investing and giving. There is a lot of uncertainty. So, because of that uncertainty, there could be a lot of anxiety and fear, and you could hold back casting your bread, casting your seed, in terms of investments, in terms of giving to others. But it's good to invest, and this is even the idea of the diversification of investments to 7 or 8 to spread it out. About the idea also of giving, being generous, giving to 7 or 8. We don't know what's going to happen. But there are things we can control, and there are things that we can do. And investing and giving are good things to do. Again, responses to unpredictability. When the clouds are full of rain, and I mean they have been full of rain in our area this week. It's been, I think, the longest period of rain I just about have ever seen. And they've emptied themselves out. But it's about, are we an observer or an actor? Are we living in fear? Oh, it may rain. Am I living in fear of the rain? It's easy to say something after it's occurred. And we can all get upset with our weather forecasters. We could get upset with others that make predictions, but if we're not careful, we're just an observer. We're not acting. So if you just observe and you make notes of what's happened, but you're not putting yourself at risk, you're not going to reap anything. And then we just need to understand. We could say, why was this flooding allowed? Why did this person have cancer? We could go on and on. But there are things we have to humble ourselves. There are things we cannot know. We don't know the way the Spirit comes in the bones of a woman or child, which, by the way, is a beautiful thought to God's love for that child as it is for us. And we don't know the work of God who makes everything. We don't need to question God. I mean, we may have questions, but part of faith is trusting God in these things. So we have all these big issues of life, and I'd referred to the Spurgeon sermon. But think of a farmer. If a farmer just lives in fear, I don't know how much rain I'm going to get. Maybe my seed's going to wash away. Maybe there'll be drought. Maybe I don't know what's going to happen with tariffs or prices, but maybe they're even saying I don't even understand how the seed grows. And there's lots we don't know. And there's certainly a lot we can't control. And I find that maddening. And I believe Solomon did as well. Because in this book we see him trying to wrestle with these things and catalog them. But the answer is not to withhold our investment, not to withhold our action. We need to participate. And we need to find the proper balance to our questions. But in all this, we're beginning, because we're entering the home stretch of Ecclesiastes, we're beginning to see some of the emergence of the conclusions here. We don't know the work of God who makes everything. And He's God, and we're not. There are things we can control, but there's many things we cannot. And there's things we can attempt to predict, but we can be humbled. And I don't care how much big data, AI, or whatever. There are limits with all the technology of the world. It's God who makes everything. And that's the beginning of wisdom. So let's continue to build upon this. Okay, let's think about this week ahead. It finally became April. I don't know about you. Sometimes in winter, I just look forward to the month of April. I think about spring and flowers and all these things. But I want to share a couple of headlines with you. Who could have predicted this a week ago? Here we've been talking about predictions, and I mean, it has been quite, in my opinion, quite a week. The first week of April 2025 is one I think I will remember for a long time. It's almost like we want to say April Fools. So we have, and includes where I live, once-in-a-generation floods hit the South and the Midwest. Did you know that 76 trillion gallons of rain have fallen? No technology can stop it. It's happened. It's been rough, and, we had earlier in this chapter, you look at the clouds and they're full of rain, and it's rained. But we've also had one of the biggest stock market crashes in a generation as well. I mean, it's been historic. There have been literally trillions of dollars lost just in the last few days. In just a very few short days, we've watched trillions of dollars go away. These can be scary things. They certainly, were you able to predict these things? Okay. So what should we do? Well, we can get upset. We can get worried. We can get anxious. We can, we're not careful, we can overreact. We can live a life of fear. So I think this chapter is so applicable to us with the types of events we live. And let me just say, I'm talking about some holistic things with the weather and, of course, the stock market. But in our individual lives, we can be humbled at any time, regardless of what's happening in the world. So whether we're talking about things happening in the world, whether we're talking about our individual life, what can we do? What can we learn from this? So, we can't predict things. We can't control things, like it was saying earlier in Ecclesiastes. We don't know when it's going to rain, what's going to happen to the stock market. I have no ability to even tell you what's going to happen this Monday with the stock market. I can look at predictive models for different things, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's a guess. But the answer is not to do. It's not nothing. We have to continue to sow our seed. Let's remember that lesson of being a participant instead of just an observer. So it says here, in the morning, sow your seed. I'm going to sell everything I have on the market, or I'm not going to, whatever. At evening, withhold not your hand. Or here's what some people say, well, I'm so worried about the market and I'm losing, I can't give to 7 or 8. I got to just take care of myself. Look, this is kind of like a bookend to the very beginning of casting our bread upon the waters and giving to 7 or 8. You don't know what's going to prosper. The market may come roaring back this year. It may, during COVID, people panicked greatly, and many sold their investments, and then they lost one of the greatest returns. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It may lose a whole lot more. I don't know. Who knows? What about the idea of giving? We could look here at the parable in Matthew 25. And in the interest of time, this is already a bit longer message today. I'm not going to read through it. It's kind of a long parable, but it's a great one. If this is a topic of interest to you, I encourage you to study Matthew 25 on 3 servants. They were all stewards. They were all given property to invest, if you will, seed to sow. 2 of which did. 1 of which did not sow their seed. They buried it. And they were considered a dishonorable servant because they lived in fear. We've all got a seed. Money seed, gift seed, different seeds. Like the seed of a farmer, you can't just observe the clouds. You got to plant your seed. You can't live in fear of what's going to happen. We can't. I would say we need to keep investing. We need to certainly keep giving. We need to be faithful. We need to be humble. We need to trust God. And realize it's a little bit scary. Well, what else can we do? Take nothing for granted. If you live in an area where it's rained a long time, you begin to wonder if I'm ever going to see the sun again. And actually, just to think about how things aren't in our control, just how God even made the earth and its relationship that we have a sun. There are planets that have no sun, no exposure to the sun. God put our earth in a perfect balance. But you know what? When the sun comes up every day, you just take it for granted. But when it's been raining for a while and you want things to dry out, there is something about the pleasantness of the sun. Or if it's that cold winter and it warms up and you can enjoy the sun. I want to encourage you, when you get the sun, to not take it for granted, to thank God for it. We need to be thankful. It's like food. We're spoiled. We often have so much to eat every day. If we go without food, even the most simple of food would taste so good if we would understand and be truly thankful for the provision. A person with no money at all is thankful when they come into money. We go without things. If we would just humble ourselves. Again, no amount of technology can control the sun or the rain. It's all within God's control. Enjoy the pleasantness of the sun and thank God for it whenever you have it. Be thankful. Same truth. The market comes back and you have your return. Be thankful. Not for the market, it's for God who's given you the provision. And rejoice. So one thing we should not be doing now is all be down and out, crying our eyes out. We're told throughout the Bible that we are to be people who rejoice. There's going to be days of darkness for sure. If a person lives many years, rejoice. Are you older? Rejoice that you've had those years. You could think, well, this hurts or this is wrong. Be thankful for the years that you've had. Be thankful for the life you have. However many more years you have, be thankful. Rejoice in them all. But let's also remember that as long as we're on this globe, there will be things to enjoy and there will be days that at times it will be dark. There's nothing new under the sun. We could go back about 100 years to 1929. when the market crashed. And people responded to that in different ways. It's very sad to say there were a lot of people that actually took their life. They were so despondent. They weren't rejoicing. But the market came back then. Things happen. In the midst of the rain, the sun will come out again. In the midst of the night, joy will come in the morning. But we have to be prepared that there will be hard days. There will be hard days that we'll have to deal with. There's nothing new under the sun. Now, I started this with some questions. What can we predict? What can we know? What can we do? Okay. We can rejoice. Whether a young person or with there's those that live many years, there's the young person. Whoever you are, be thankful. If you're young, think of the years that are ahead of you. There's no guarantee for tomorrow, but God's given you the strength of your youth. And walk in it. If you're older, rejoice in the days you've been given and be thankful for all that you have. But also know that the day of judgment's going to come. So it's God who made all things, and it's to Him that we must give account. So we need to be prepared for that. We need to, if you're feeling vexed, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling worried, if you're feeling anxious, that's not what God would want you to do. Remove the vexation from your heart. Put away the pain from your body. If this has been a hard week, has it been a hard week? Yeah. I would call this week a bit of a week of darkness. Yeah. But I'm going to choose to rejoice in it. Now, I want to end with this. I didn't want to end on that. I want to kind of end on a bigger thought, because a lot of this is about what we can see and what we want to live in a world. We think we have so much technology that we can control everything. Okay? So I want to continue this thought, and I want to jump to relate this to a very famous passage of John 3. Now, many times we think of these baseball games have started, and people will hold up a sign that says John 3:16, a wonderful verse. I'm going to share that in conclusion. But let's look at what precedes it. So Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and he says, you must be born again. Well, that's a command. So we must be born again. And he says this in verse 8, the wind blows where it wishes. And you hear it sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is who is everyone born of the Spirit. It's like the weather. It's like the stock market. That the wind is an analogy of things. Can we control the wind? Can we tame the wind? The wind comes. Things happen. The wind's just a picture of the things that are unpredictable and what we can't control. But Nicodemus had trouble. He said, how can these things be? That's life sometimes. You know what? We think we're so smart. We think we've come a long ways. Yeah, there are things we can figure out, but there are things we cannot. And Jesus said, are you the teacher of Israel? You don't understand these things? Truly, truly, I say to you, we speak of what we know and we bear witness to what we have seen, but you do not receive our testimony. So what we're dealing with here is trying to create an analogy of earthly things, like a farmer with sowing seed, to understand it in a much deeper spiritual truth. He said, if I told you earthly things you don't believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things? A lot of what we're looking at in Ecclesiastes are earthly things, but they're to teach us something at a much deeper level. If we understand we can't control the wind, we can't control the weather. A farmer's at mercy, an investor's at mercy, whoever we are, from the time of Solomon to today, as long as we live, as long as we're on earth, AI will not figure it all out. No. There are things we cannot predict. There are things we can't control, but there are things we can do. And that's where Jesus is trying to get Nicodemus to make a decision. You must be born again. You must come to the end of yourself. It's what Solomon's saying. You must understand that God is in control, and we must depend upon Him. Which leads us, with that context in mind, to the famous verse, John 3:16, the one that we can see held up. And it's as simple as this, if we would receive it. For God so loved the world. People can quote, why would God allow storms? Why does God allow this? God's the one that gave life to the baby and gave it to you and me. He's the one that gives life to the youth. He's the one that gives life and years to those who are older. And He loves us. We're in a fallen, sinful world, but number one, He loves us. That's something we can know if we would receive it. 2, He gave us His only Son. Because of our sin, because of the fallen world, He gave us His Son, Jesus Christ. We can know this. What can we do? We believe it. Whoever believes, the fact is God loves the world. The fact is God gave His Son. These are things we can know, and therefore what we can do is trust, believe, accept. And then we can trust we will not perish, but have eternal life. But we have to be able to grasp it. I encourage you to meditate and think about these things. I hope these are things that you know, and I hope these are things that you've done.